Welcome back, everyone. Today's video is a very different one. I'm going to be having some conversations with you guys about my wish list for the next season and for Lightfall and the next future of Destiny. This is coming from a build crafter's perspective. If you guys enjoy this video or have some different thoughts about it, please put that in the comments. It means a lot that you guys view this, and it's a kind of different video, so I want to have your opinions of what my content should be like, because I know there's not a million builds in the game, and at some point we're gonna run out. So I do like to have these things being as filler content until new abilities and stuff come out. In this video, we're going to go over things like mods and other ways to test our mods, like harder GM content and the overhaul that needs to be happened with anti-barrier and overload rounds and everything that should be going on with champions. I also want to talk about some PvP mod usage, and I have a list next to me and I should just go over it with you guys. That's it for the little intro. If you guys enjoy this video, it would mean a ton if you guys left a subscribe and just to watch through it, because I think I have some interesting points that you guys could have some different opinions on in the comments. Thank you for watching, and let's get into this wish list. Here you go, guys. For the first item on my wish list, I want some more mods. I know in the past seasons we've got some well mods, we've got some charged flight mods. We also, at the beginning, we had the Warmind Cell mods, but the Warmind Cell mods have really gotten nerfed, so you can't even use them, really. It's not really that effective. There's a few different builds, but I just don't think they're as useful as they should be. This kind of takes away that we're actually reducing the amount of mods, when I think they should be adding them. This next season is actually a great opportunity, too, because I think, just like how in the season of Lost, where they added a bunch of well mods extra, we need to see this, because this is going to be a very dry season if we don't have many things to add. I want to see some stuff for a little bit more long range, where we don't have to pick up our well mods, or some system that we'll be able to get our charge of light stacks from long range more consistently. There are a few mods already in the game that do this, but you have to get a bunch of multi-kills or a bunch of more kills that aren't really kind of excessive and kind of take away from your stats. It's interesting how they did with the stats, like with the fragments and everything, with taking away stats, and the charge of light mods do a lot of taking away stats. Some of these stats are very needed for some of the builds, so it kind of restricts on what I'm going to use. There's just so much restrictions in the game at the moment. There's a lot of really good classes like Stasis and stuff with the Crystal Well mods that kind of makes it unfair to other classes like Solar, like things that are hard to get kills with melees and stuff when there's really weak melees in the class. And a lot of the Warlock melees, except like the Arc one, the new one, have been really weak, and it's kind of hard to make those mod setups if you're not in some easy content, because when you're in a GM, it's already hard to hit a melee in general, except if you're using the Solar long range ones. But just having to get a kill with them to spawn well mods puts you in a really bad spot, and to have it be so hard to get the kills makes it just unrewarding in general. I really enjoying some of the mods and stuff I can use with glaives, because glaives actually count as weapons, not melees. So you could do a lot of things with that with the Void Elemental Wells, which I've shown off in a lot of my glaive builds. But I definitely think there should be more things going on with glaives, and that's actually another part in my wish list. It's kind of like a part 2. I want more glaive interactions, which they already did say they're going to be adding, which I'm very happy about, but I definitely think they better go all the way with it, because there's a lot of things I would like to see, like some of the mods on your arms that will allow you to do melee damage to get other abilities, which I think will make it crazy in the future. Some things that I do worry about is things like Winter's Guile and some of that stuff that buffs the damage of the melees by 7 times, which I think could be a little stupid, but I do think we kind of need some fun in the game and some risk factor if we're doing GMs. So I think in some forms it's worth it, but in some other forms I think in raids and stuff it could break some of the damage phases if we can use a glaive. But then we do have the factors that there's time limits and stuff, so it's a big conversation we need to have. That's really it for the mods. I really think we should have some long range setups and some new well mods. I just want to kind of replicate what we did season of Lost. Made a few different mods for each of the subclasses, and we made some different colors. I really enjoyed some of the synergies, but I do want the Solar mod that spawns from Explosive Wellmaker. That's very hard to proc on other classes, and the restoration of 13 HP per second is just not worth it. And I believe it's not going to be stacking in the future with the Solar buffs, with the Solar buffs of restoration, so I don't really know what the use is going to be unless you're using another class. And even if you're using on another class, is 13 HP really worth it? I think it hails in the comparison to the Avoid Well mods, which are actually pretty easy to spawn with the Reaping Wellmaker. I use a lot of those in my build, and I really like to bring that to the content. I really enjoy the Void Well mods, and I think that should be like kind of like a starter. And like some of the Charge of Light mods that are Void, and some other stuff that allows weapon kills to give you Charge of Light are really a good step in the right direction, and I think we should try to replicate this. The next thing on my wish list is better testing grounds for GMs and everything. I think GMs are great, the difficulty is pretty fun, and it's just good enough that some builds that you really get to test them to their full extent. But I do think we could do a lot more builds if there was more ad clear based things, kind of like Master Catch Crash, but I don't want an even harder version. Maybe less champions than we're used to in most hard level content, but I definitely think we should be doing more ad clear because things like glaive builds and stuff will really shine. I really am not enjoying the champion meta right now, and it's kind of fun to use different weapons like Wish Ender and stuff to break barriers, but I really don't think it's a long-term solution. And that's what I wanted to get to. Do you guys think the anti-barrier, overload, and unstoppable are really the best solutions to make harder content, or should we increase the damage of enemies or increase their health pills? And as said with the Master Catch Crash, I think that was a great first step because in the beginning of the season, that was pretty hard content, and I think it allowed me to do some GM testing and master testing because we're so low light level. But I really didn't like having to manufacture lower light levels just to test my builds. I would love to have like a GM focused like season event or something that would allow us to test GM builds all through the whole year and allow us to actually test out big ad clear, because I think like stasis builds and stuff, like they're great to freeze champions and everything, but you haven't really seen their full amount of brokenness until you have a large amount of ads. And there is actually some strikes in the game that do this. Some things like the Saber Strike in the beginning, which you can get some great ad clear builds in, and I really enjoy recording on those weeks. But weeks like Lightblade just really stink to try to make videos and stuff, and I really want them to make it something more ad clear based. Even though Lightblade I don't even think is the worst of it, there's some much worse strikes. Let me think about some. There's some really bad strikes that literally have like very low ads, like Cabal strikes and stuff, that are like, there's a bunch of big ads, but there's not really a bunch of mini ones that you can kill. And I think a bunch of Devour builds and stuff that give you health back for kills makes it even harder to run. But it is making it a little bit easier with Le Monarque and some of the new exotics. And that really makes it enjoyable to play now because some of them like instantly kill red bars and stuff, and it's pretty crazy. And that leads on to my next item on my wish list. The next item on my wish list kind of leads into this. So I was really noticing with all the exotic primaries I was using, it's really hard to switch off an exotic primary. Once you try a legendary primary, some of the fragments on Solar that might give you 4 seconds of restoration per kill just don't work anymore because it takes more than 4 seconds to kill a GM red bar with a legendary primary. And some of these exotic primaries just excel, like the Le Monarque, in just one-tapping ads. And then some of them don't actually feel like they've been buffed as much as the Le Monarque and really struggle to kill ads, even though with that 40% buff. When I'm going in a GM with a legendary primary, it's literally impossible to run some of these builds. With the restoration extending buff, it is impossible because it could take 5 to 6 seconds to kill one GM ad. And that is just truly just awful. But I do understand how they need exotic primaries to feel stronger, but I don't know if it's the legendaries are getting too underpowered or it's exactly where they want. So I really just want them to be putting in some fragments and stuff that make it easier, or buffing some of the old fragments, because I definitely think that like some things rely on using exotics too much, and then some other things just aren't efficient with the solar fragments. There's some fragments that are just completely useless, like getting ignition kills give you orbs of power. I've never seen anybody run that weren't looking for the extra resilience bump, and it's kind of silly. The amount you need to get an ignition is quite a lot for what little you get from a few orbs of power. And orbs of power are one of the things that have really become hard to get because you have to get multi-kills and then pick them up in close range. which really make any builds hard. And I'd really like to be able to use some of the healing orb mods and everything on the boots, which I really never get to use because of all these things. That's just something I think about when I'm making build making, and we really need some survivability on some of the solar hunter classes and other things like the arc hunter classes. I really struggled to use those in GMs, and there's only the Invis helmet that allows me to actually do that, which actually I will be coming out with a build soon on it. That's really it for this part of the wish list, and let's get on to the next one. The last item on my wish list is I want them to bring some mods and other things to PvP. The PvP build space is very bleak right now, with only being able to use an exotic and maybe a ability on a subclass or fragments on a subclass. There's very little mods you can use in PvP, and that kind of disappoints me because I really want it to feel like build making. There's some things you can do with orbs, but you have to get some crazy multi-kills and do something crazy to get damage buffs and stuff, and I really just don't think it's worth it. Things like Bomber and stuff do work in PvP, but they really just don't do enough for how much they cost and all the benefits they give, because it's like 10% in some situations on different subclasses and stuff compared to like 30% for Warlocks in PvE. So it can be almost like 3 times smaller than their PvE buffs, which is completely just absurdly bad. And I don't understand why they just haven't buffed these, and I think they've nerfed them in the past actually, and they really just don't feel like they use. Maybe I know well mods could be a little bit busted in PvP, but they could make it a little bit more interesting and definitely make some crazy builds, so just I can have another space to test. And I think PvP, it's a little bit hard if you want to balance the game, but it really doesn't seem like Bungie's that down with balancing the game with all the abilities like Invis and stuff. I know they're trying, but I really just don't think that's their core values in this game, and they really just want the common player to have fun. That's all for my wish list. I know it got a little bit bleak at the end, but I really enjoyed you guys coming here to watch my video. And if you guys made it to here, it means a ton. And it just meant so much that you guys showed up and watched my video, because we're slowly growing to 1,000 and we might get monetized someday, so it means a lot. We're slowly climbing up that hill and we're slowly accelerating. I love every single comment I see, and I love to respond, and I love some great dialect in the comments. So if you guys want to have a conversation with me, or even do some other things with like Discord and stuff, I would love to have that in the future. I've gotten a few comments about if I should do live streaming in the future, and I've tried it in the past, but I just don't think I had the amount of people watching. But if you guys would like that in the future, I might do it if you have enough people in here. That's it for the future of the channel, and I really appreciate you guys watching my wish list. I hope you guys have an amazing holiday, and I'm so excited for Christmas because it is my favorite holiday of the year, my favorite time of the year. I love snow, and I love to have some holiday cheer. Thank you for watching, and goodbye, guys.